When someone lies to you, where does the lie happen? Almost everyone answers the same way. The mouth, the tongue. That's where it comes out, so that must be where it lives. The Qur'an doesn't say that. In a passage revealed 1400 years ago, it doesn't blame the tongue at all. It reaches past the mouth, past the eyes, and lays the charge somewhere very specific, the front of the head, the forehead. And it calls that forehead lying and sinful. Now, a 7th century Arab had no way of knowing what sits behind the forehead, and modern neuroscience took until living memory to find out. So why does the Qur'an blame the forehead?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. كلا لئن لم ينته لنسفعا بالناصية ناصية كاذبة خاطئة.
The setting is Mecca, early on. A man, one of the leading opponents of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is trying to stop him from praying at the Kaaba, not debating him, physically preventing him from worshipping. And God answers him like this: no, if he does not stop, we will take him by the nāṣiyah, the front of the head, a lying, sinful nāṣiyah, the front of the head. A note before we go on. What you just heard is a translation of the meaning. The Qur'an's own words are the Arabic you heard recited. And in that Arabic, the word doing all the work is nāṣiyah, the forelock, the hair at the very front of the scalp, and by extension, the front of the head itself. Read that again, and something should feel off. The Qur'an doesn't say we will seize the liar. It says we will seize a lying, sinful forelock. It puts the moral character, the lying, the sinfulness, not on the man, but on a piece of his anatomy. And these are exactly the questions our source book asks. Why did the Qur'an describe the front of the head as being lying and sinful? Why didn't the Qur'an say that the person was lying and sinful? What is the relationship between the front of the head and lying and sinfulness? Because notice, it is not a natural way to speak. We don't say a thieving hand. We say a thief. Language puts blame on people. This verse puts it on a location, and a location can only be blamed if something is happening there. So let's do the obvious thing, which nobody in the 7th century could do. Let's look inside. If we look into the skull at the front of the head, we find the prefrontal area of the cerebrum. It is the frontmost region of the brain, sitting directly behind the forehead, directly behind the nāṣiyah. And what does physiology say it does? Here is a standard textbook, Essentials of Anatomy and Physiology, quoted in our source book. The motivation and the foresight to plan and initiate movements occur in the anterior portion of the frontal lobes, the prefrontal area. This is a region of association cortex, and from the same textbook. In relation to its involvement in motivation, the prefrontal area is also thought to be the functional center for aggression. Sit with what that list actually contains. Motivation, why you do a thing. Foresight, seeing where it leads. Planning, initiating, and aggression. That is not a description of a body part. That is a description of a character. Now connect it to lying specifically, because this is the part that surprises people. We treat lying as a speech problem. It isn't. Think about what a lie actually requires you to do. First, you have to know the truth. You have to be holding it. Then you have to stop yourself from saying it, which takes active effort because the truth is the default. Then you have to build something that isn't true. Check it against what your listener already believes, and keep it consistent for as long as the lie has to last. Every one of those steps — suppression, planning, foresight, holding a goal against an impulse — is prefrontal work. Truth is the easy road. Lying is the expensive one. And the front of the head is what pays. There is even a well-known case in the history of medicine. In 1848, a railway foreman in Vermont named Phineas Gage survived an iron rod driven straight through the front of his skull. He lived. He could speak, he could remember, he could reason. But the people who knew him said his conduct had changed. His judgment, his restraint, his ability to hold to a plan. Damage the front of the head. And what you damage is not knowledge. It is character, which is precisely what the Qur'an attached to it. And this isn't a stray image the Qur'an uses once and abandons. The same word comes back.
إني توكلت على الله ربي وربكم ما من دابة إلا هو آخذ بناصيتها إن ربي على صراط مستقيم.
In Surah Hud, the prophet Hud stands in front of a hostile people and tells them where his confidence comes from. I have put my trust in God, my Lord, and your Lord. There is no creature but that he holds it by its forelock. Again, not by the throat, which is where you'd seize an enemy. Not by the hands, which is where you'd stop an action. By the forelock, by the front of the head. The Qur'an keeps reaching for the same place, as if that is where a creature is truly held, where the intention lives, upstream of anything it ever says or does. Take control of the front of the head, and you haven't restrained a person. You've taken the person. So here is where it lands. According to Professor Keith L. Moore, scientists have only discovered these functions of the prefrontal area in the last 60 years. 60 years against 1,400. For 13 centuries, there was no instrument, no imaging, no method that could have told anyone that the region behind the forehead is where planning, motivation, and restraint are seated. There was no reason to connect that spot to honesty. And the man delivering this verse was not a physician. He was unlettered. In a society with no anatomy, no dissection, and no concept of localized brain function at all. Now, let's be fair, because you deserve the strongest version of the other side. A critic will tell you that taking someone by the forelock was simply an Arabic idiom. The way we say, someone was grabbed by the scruff of the neck. It means humiliation and total control, and it isn't an anatomy lesson. And that's a reasonable reading. We're not going to pretend otherwise, but notice what the objection doesn't explain. An idiom for seizing describes an action. This verse doesn't stop at the action. It hands the forelock two attributes, lying and sinful, and it hands them to the forelock instead of to the man. That is the part that has to be accounted for. And you can weigh that yourself. We're not going to tell you what it proves. There's something uncomfortable in this verse, and I think it's meant to be there. We tend to judge ourselves by our words and our actions, because those are the parts other people can see. This verse goes further back than that. It reaches to the place where a thing is decided, before it is ever said, which means the accounting doesn't start when you open your mouth. It starts earlier, in the planning, in the motive, in the quiet moment where you chose which version to tell. That's the part nobody witnesses. And that is exactly the part the Qur'an names. The tongue speaks, but the lie is written further back. This episode, like this whole series, is based on the book A Brief Illustrated Guide to Understanding Islam by I.E. A. Ibrahim, the reference for every quote you heard today. And you'll find it linked in the description. And a word about why we make these. This is Qur'an Explorer, and this series exists for two kinds of viewer. If you're Muslim, we hope these signs let you see your own book with fresh eyes, and that you come away knowing there is far more in it than you were ever taught. And if you're not Muslim, you are genuinely welcome here. Nothing on this channel asks you to accept anything on trust. We give you the verse. We give you what science actually found. We give you the dates. And where there's a fair objection, like the one you just heard, we give you that too. Then we leave the question with you, exactly as the Qur'an itself leaves it. That's the entire effort behind this channel, making the signs in the Qur'an clear, accurate, and accessible, so that anyone, from any background, can weigh the evidence for themselves and understand Islam as it actually is, rather than as they've been told it is. If this gave you something to think about, take a second to like the video, share it with someone who'd find it interesting, and subscribe so you don't miss the series. Next episode: two seas that meet, and a barrier between them that will not let them mix. See you in the next one.